Hello and welcome. This is Trevor Crow. The show is Trevor and Friends, and I am absolutely delighted to have two special guests in the studio right now. These are our two candidates for First Selectman and Select Person, and it's Anthony Moore, Rachel Khanna, both Democrats, and we only have one more week until Election Day. How's everybody feeling?
Trevor, thank you for having us back. It's really so nice to be back on your show. I think we're feeling good. We've hit about 17,000 doors. We've been out pounding the pavement. We've had a lot of great conversations with residents, and yeah.
People are aware that there needs to be change in town, and the kinds of issues that they're talking about are the ones that we thought were most important. Things like protecting and supporting the schools, fixing things before they break. It costs a lot less to fix things on our timetable rather than to wait for an emergency to crop up. People are already voting. That's the other thing. So Rachel and I were out at Cos Cob today at the railroad station, and people were coming by and saying, like, the whole range. It's like, oh, election? And you're like, yes, here's this. And also, I already voted for you. And occasionally people would say, yes, I already voted, but not for you. So that's the nature of the elective process.
Well, and this is the first year that we have early voting in municipal elections. So it'll be interesting to see, whether, that was able to, whether more people came out to vote because of early voting or how that's going to affect the election.
And that's super important, Trevor, which is that as a municipal election, it is, regardless of where you live, historically, in the United States, people don't pay attention to them in the same way, and the vote totals drop, sometimes, in half of what you get on a national election, which is crazy considering how local elections affect everything you do every day. It's everything from, whether you got crumbling sidewalks and streets, that are nicely paved, and to who brings your stormwater around your house rather than through it.
Mm-hmm. And the quality of your child's school.
Exactly. Huge, very important. Okay, anybody tuning in, Trevor Crow, show is Trevor and Friends today. I have Anthony Moore, Rachel Khanna with us. These are our candidates for First Select Person and Select Person here in Greenwich. Everybody, Election Day is 1 week from today. There's early voting. You can get up and go vote right now. There's even voting hours over this weekend, extended hours. So please vote. And as Anthony just mentioned, this is really even more important than national elections because it affects you directly in your town. And there's one thing that I've been keeping an eye on. I know everybody here is, and you sort of alluded to it, which is fix stuff before it's broken. And just recently, the RTM voted to ask for a long-term plan for our town. Hasn't been done in years. And Anthony, would you comment on that, please?
Well, you need to plan ahead. You need to have a capital plan. It doesn't cost money to have a capital plan. What it does do is it reduces your risk because planning avoids emergencies. When we wait, roofs collapse and repairs cost triple. A real plan saves taxpayers money. So we're going to do that for the first time. And again, this was a unanimous vote of the Budget Oversight Committee of the RTM, the town legislature, right, which is a 230-person legislature. And we have these committees that oversee various town hall functions. And the Budget Oversight Committee had asked in last spring if the First Selectman and the chairman of the BET would be willing to provide us with information on how we're going to avoid what's known as a fiscal cliff. The problem that we were looking at, and we are looking at, is we're building two school buildings concurrently right now, and if you just cost out how much we expect in revenues against how much we expect we're going to have to pay off this very short-term debt that we're looking at doing, we're not going to be able to meet our debt policy guidelines in 2 years. So a capital budget is something that acknowledges that if you have multi-year building projects, you ought to have a multi-year plan that includes a multi-year capacity to pay. We're not doing that now, and the Budget Oversight Committee called the First Selectman and called the chairman of the BET to account for this and asked them to, bring a plan. Over the summer, there were apparently a couple of meetings of various officials who would, be contributing to that. But when push came to shove, no plan was delivered, and no plan has been delivered.
So just to repeat this, I'm sorry, I'm going to get to Rachel in a second. There has been no long-term planning here in the town of Greenwich, Connecticut, with some of the most sophisticated people in finance probably on the globe. So Rachel, how would you jump in? Oh, and we had just had a caller talk about a fire engine. Now, we are maybe a decade late in renewing at least one of our engines. Remember when we were on the campaign trail together, this was still an issue back. This was like 3 years ago. So thoughts on that?
Well, I just wanted to go back to the plan, or the lack thereof. When we came on your show back, I don't remember exactly, in early June, we brought this up, and this is something that the League of Women Voters had identified in their report back in 2023. So this is not a new issue. This is something that has been ongoing and that we failed to, or our current leadership has failed to address, and that needs to be done. And it's being recognized by the BOC on the RTM that this is something that is now urgent, and we can't bring our town to the future responsibly without having a plan.
Yeah, either we're going to abandon our infrastructure, our amenities, and our assets to the past, or we're going to make them ready for the next generation. And just to let you know, my opponent has doubled down on no plan. He said in our debates recently, and you can see it on YouTube, GCTV on YouTube, he said, sure, I guess I could develop a 5-year plan, but you know what? Some emergency might crop up and it just knocks your plans to smithereens. Well, yes, when you have a bunch of stuff you forgot you had, things you need to do, everything from a high school pool to a skating rink to the Havemeyer building, when you forget those things, they become emergencies because they fall apart and essentially tell you that they need to be fixed immediately. That costs a lot more than if you're looking ahead and you're planning for these things in a way that allows us to do them on our timeline, or choose not to do them at all.
And then when you have an emergency, like needing a new fire engine, you're prepared. It doesn't come as a surprise or a shock, and you can address that.
I do recall when we were talking about this fire engine, it was going to be at an incredibly high cost. And at that moment, we were all just shocked because we were just starting to walk into sort of an inflationary period of time. I can't even imagine what it would cost now.
Everything is so much more expensive.
3 years later. So again, the responsibility, I believe, of leadership of any town is to be able to plan out for a period of time, to set this out with thoughtful, right maintenance, long-term bonding potentially to make sure that our infrastructure is in decent shape. We have a sewer that needs to be hardened. That's the whole site around Grass Island. At least $50 million expense. This is not something that could be under a public-private partnership. I can't imagine any person wanting to put their name on that. But you never
John
know.
Oliver, maybe.
Oh, that's right. In Danbury, I forgot about him. But so we have a lot to do. So
every time I mention the Grass Island water treatment plant to residents, and the fact that it's at risk, should we have, as sea levels rise, and the potential effect that could have, whether it's sewage flowing into the sound or sewage getting backed up and not being able to, drink your tap water, run your dishwasher, take a shower, all of these things. People are shocked, just absolutely stunned, because it's just really irresponsible.
Right, and if we wait for an emergency, if actually the sewage treatment plant were to be overtopped by seawater or storm surge from Hurricane Melissa or something like that, it wouldn't be as simple, let's let the water drain out, everything's fine. Suddenly you've got a, very expensive emergency on your hand to try and figure out how you're going to fix this thing. And so this doesn't mean we need to do something this year or next year. It means we need to plan ahead for a multi-year process, just like we should do with anything. And again, figure out our capacity to pay over time and do it in small increments, because that's what everybody does. You don't do a 50,000 mile every 5,000 miles. You do on your car, you do a 5,000 mile, and you do a 1 year. And that way your car is still running after 10 years. You also haven't overspent.
So I have a question for the two of you. When you're elected, manifesting, what are you going to do first day one? What's your plan? What are your priorities?
I think we need to we'll need to sit with all the departments and figure out and start developing priorities. I think it's our role to set a clear vision for what the priorities should be for all of these issues that need to be addressed in town.
Yeah, and the budget's already well underway, right? Town budget's underway, and school budgets are underway. We just had a shot across the bow from the Republican on the BET who suggested that there should be a certain guideline that we guide to. We'll have to see whether that is the guideline that, like in the last few years, is one which means that's the most that will be spent. That's the BET's responsibility. In recent years, it's been done unilaterally by members of the majority party. I think in this election season, we're likely to see a more collaborative effort to try and figure out what the reasonable guidelines are.
I sure hope so.
Yeah, and they may be the same, they may be different. But so we're going to have to jump in pretty quickly because Rachel and I may have different priorities, regardless of how much money there is, different priorities in how we think our money should be allocated across town hall, assuming we're in charge.
Okay, so I'm going to address an issue that's coming up, looming really at the end of this week, literally. And that is SNAP benefits are going to be not expiring, actually just going away due to what's happening on the federal level. And we have about 883 families right here in Greenwich who rely on these benefits. At about $25 per week, after doing a little math, it's about $9,000 a month here in Greenwich. And God forbid we have children here in Greenwich going hungry at school. So what would your sort of thought process on this, how to fix this if it's possible? What would you do to address this issue?
Straight up, Rachel and I have been talking about this for a while. And what I know is that same conversation has not been happening in town hall. Stamford is already well ahead of the game in terms of planning for how it's going to handle the loss of any pass-through money from the federal government, and that would include SNAP benefits. Medicaid is on the bubble, as you know. There was a study done by, a report out, I think, by one of the state publications that there could be as many as 1,500 Medicaid patients in Greenwich who lose their Medicaid.
Head Start programs, and there's
Start.
one program in Stamford that's going to be directly affected.
So,
it's and that'll have a ripple effect, not just people having to stay home if they can't take their kid to childcare, or if
They
their
can't
children,
work.
having to make very difficult choices if they can't put food on the table for their families. People are going to be really badly hurt, and we need a plan. We need to be prepared to address that.
yeah, it's the type of thing that we need to prioritize up front right now, and we see nothing happening. We've talked to the folks in town hall, and the sense is we'll just have to reduce benefits where the reductions occur. Well, I don't think that's a good solution. I think we should, one, categorize and catalog what's at risk, two, find out what the costs are, and three, see whether there are ways either through foundations and grants that are possible because we have such a generous sector of nonprofits in town.
We do.
Or if we'll need to figure out ways in which we can free up money in town hall to help our most vulnerable folks.
Yeah, and at the same time, we know that our nonprofits that are helping all these families are going to be under a lot of pressure. So we need to make sure that they're supported and that they have the resources that they need.
I know that when you were in the state legislature, Rachel, that you did support and vote for not-for-profits or money for that area. And we're certainly going to need more of it. I'm right now, anybody listening to this at this moment, this is Trevor Crow, Trevor and Friends. I'm asking each of you to get on to neighbortoneighbor.org, and donate. We have families that are going to be hungry right here in Greenwich. So if you can, actually get on to Neighbor or contact Demetria Nelson over at the Human Services area, because there's plenty of ways to give, whether it's food cards, coats, but we need to help our neighbors right now. And this is an emergency, like ASAP right now. And I'd like to see some more planning coming from town hall.
There is a winter coat drive going on. at the
Yes.
moment. And then I think Neighbor to Neighbor is also starting a pilot project for clothing for children, which I was
Yeah.
just reading about.
So we don't want hungry kids here. We really don't. And
No.
I'm just
Or
just
anywhere.
appalled anywhere. You're absolutely right. But I'm appalled that we're at this position and we haven't made a lot of plans. And here we are, right at the cusp of. And again, we're going to have a lot of us, myself included, as of November 1st or 2nd, we'll be finding out about how high our premiums are going to be, and it's going to be a little bit of a shock. So there's a bunch of things coming at us.
Yeah, and look, this is the role of the Board of Selectmen. I think we underestimate how little that is being used today and with the current administration. The first selectman and the other two members of the Board of Selectmen really are the conduit of the community to our town services. And that means we should be leading the way, and we should be using the bully pulpit, the ability to speak out and convene our community and lead ahead. It's not just about creating a budget and sending it off and then walking away and having a day. We are that 24/7, 365. And it means, again, even where we don't have sort of budgetary or org chart responsibility, we still are responsible for every citizen in this town. And I do believe that has not been adequately a capability that has not been adequately used in the current administration. It could have potentially slowed down or made less onerous the cuts we had to the school budgets by having the first selectman there in front early on when members of his own party were contemplating this. We can have a collaborative conversation about what's the best way to fund our schools. And no one party has all the answers, but you can't get there if you don't have someone essentially leading the community conversation.
Well, I was just going to say, and being willing to have those conversations and being willing to advocate and stand up for, for the families who have children in the schools. That's what we need to do a better job of, is really advocating for our residents.
Yeah, it's not all about just cutting the ribbons after somebody else built the building. It's really about making those kinds of forward-looking activities part of your job every day.
And showing up.
Another area that a person emailed me this earlier today was tax credits for the elderly, right? To be able to age in place. So we were talking about schools and hungry kids, but there's seniors here who need some tax relief, and it has been sort of ignored or sort of fallen off the radar. I guess it was around $1 million budgeted for tax credits in 2003, and today it's down to about 800,000. What are your thoughts on that? If you're elected, I should say when you two are elected, what would you do to address that tax credit?
I just want to start off by saying that we've had so many conversations with older adults and young families, and this is something that has come up so many times, is older adults being able to age in place and young families being able to find a place to live here. And I can't tell you how many times we've heard it on doors. It's come up a lot. And
you can't, this isn't about personal responsibility so much as about community responsibility. There is a program in place that allows seniors to get tax credits for having lived in their place, and we need to dig into how well it's been utilized. It appears it's been underutilized and underappreciated over time. Once we get a chance to sort of crack the books and look at the data, we'll get a sense of what we want to do going forward. But it's clearly a tool in the toolbox that needs to be more broadly used.
So I love this sort of, we need to be thinking about our town for each of our citizens cradle to grave. And how do we make sure that everyone's safe and sound and gets the services they need? And this is something that needs more planning, clearly.
Yeah,
So-
it always starts with that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Sense of theme?
That's a theme. There you go. So Havemeyer, this is an incredibly beautiful building in one of the most expensive pieces of real estate probably in the country, or pretty close to it, right? Any thoughts on when you're elected, what would you want it to be, to become? How could it be utilized? It's a beautiful place. And it could be part of our town and really something that could be a jewel in the crown.
Absolutely. It's a centerpiece in town. It's a huge piece of property, and it's been underappreciated and not fixed up. One of those things that now it's become an emergency because there's $28 million or so of unfunded fix-up that has to occur. And so suddenly the calculus becomes, how can we get it off the books? Well, there are ways, I think Rachel and I believe, where we can both absorb that cost, whether it's through public-private partnerships or, RFPs to businesses that are looking at doing interesting things. But the first step should be addressing it by asking our community. And this was done in a backwards way in the last year or so, where in a secret process, the first selectman sent out RFPs to a bunch of businesses, said, what do you want to do with this building? And he got back a bunch of stuff. And then in another secret process, he had some regular citizens sit down, and they're eminent folks in town, but their remit was to pick one. And the one they picked was a hotel. Now, the first selectman had said he was going to bring the Havemeyer building back to the people, but what he ended up doing was getting a plan that brings it back to people who don't live in Greenwich. I don't think that was the idea. And I know that in that first meeting, which I attended and Rachel attended, where the public had an opportunity to speak on this after this thing seemed to have been decided, most people were quite unhappy. A senior center was one idea, senior living facilities, art centers, a whole
and
bunch
I think
of
there's
stuff.
such an opportunity. It's a beautiful building, but again, to Anthony's point, is we need to talk to the community and find out what they want it for. That is our role. We're stewards, right?
Yeah.
It is not our building. It belongs to the community.
And
So
we can
you
have
wouldn't pull it down like the East Wing without any conversation.
I think we'd be strung up if we did that. So, but no, the first thing I think you need to do is have a bit of a conversation about your vision for the town. I think everybody would agree that piece of property should in some way anchor a future of the town.
Love
and,
that.
There are ways in which you can ask architectural firms, landscape design firms, in a sort of design charrette way, where say, what ideas would you have for this in a public process, and have them bring it. It doesn't cost any money. It's free. And they set out their ideas, and the public takes a look at these great things, and it's been done across this country time and again. That would be a way to inspire people.
And there's so much talent in the town that we should avail ourselves of.
So I have had the honor of being on the show today, and we're going to go to a station break with Anthony Moore, Rachel Khanna, both candidates for the for Selectman and Selectman. I've got one other piece in my mind. They have some great ideas about planning, about future, about taking care of each and every one of our citizens, no whatever age you are, and you gotta vote. Please vote, everybody.
Yes,
so we're
please
going to go
vote.
to a station break. Trevor Crow, Trevor and Friends, WGCH will be right back.